There is a saying, deeply rooted in wisdom, that the best revenge is not anger, not hatred, not shouting louder than the world. The best revenge is to improve yourself. We all carry wounds from betrayal, from rejection, from people who doubted us, laughed at us, dismissed us, and in those moments it's easy to react, to strike back, to prove something to them. But when your energy is scattered in revenge, your growth stands still. When you chase others, you lose your direction. So the path I invite you to walk today is different. This path is not loud, it's not full of rage, it's silent, focused, and powerful. It's the path of self-mastery. Because every moment you spend working on yourself, on your body, your mind, your spirit, you are stepping out of the past and rising into your future. You don't need to announce it, you don't need to prove it. Your transformation will speak for itself, and those who once doubted you will be left behind, not because you hurt them, but because you outgrew them. Let today be the day you stop wasting time on revenge and start investing that energy in becoming the person they never saw coming. When we experience pain, betrayal, or disrespect, the natural response is often emotional. Our first instinct might be to retaliate, to prove someone wrong, or to show the world that we are not to be underestimated. But when you truly begin to observe the nature of such reactions, you realize that they are fleeting, impulsive, and often destructive, not to the other person, but to yourself. The more energy you put into chasing revenge, the more you remain attached to the very people or experiences that hurt you. In this sense, revenge becomes a chain, keeping you connected to your past and preventing you from stepping into your future. The truth is, the more you try to make others regret what they did to you, the more power you give them over your current state of being. That is not freedom, that is not strength, that is still living under their shadow. Improvement, on the other hand, is a silent force. It does not scream for attention. It does not try to convince, it transforms. The most powerful shift in mindset begins when you stop thinking about proving others wrong and start thinking about becoming so right within yourself that no one's opinion, no one's doubt, no one's negativity can affect your direction anymore. You begin to understand that the real opponent is not outside of you. It's not the person who betrayed you. It's not the people who mocked your dreams. It's the version of you that is willing to stay in that darkness. It's the part of you that would rather be distracted by revenge than focused on growth. There is discipline in healing, there is power in silence, and there is unmatched strength in choosing to rise rather than retaliate. Self-improvement is not glamorous. It's early mornings when no one is watching. It's choosing to read when you could scroll. It's staying committed to your goals when no one claps for you. But every day you take a step forward, you are shedding the version of you that was dependent on validation. You are walking away from the noise, from the blame, from the emotional chaos that others try to place upon you. The best revenge, then, is not in proving them wrong. It's in becoming someone so focused, so elevated, so transformed, that their opinions lose all value. You cannot force someone to respect you. You cannot make someone see your worth. But you can become so aligned with your purpose that the respect you seek begins to come from within. When you stop needing to win the approval of those who doubted you, you begin to win something far greater, peace. And peace is something no one can take from you. Not with words, not with silence, not with actions. It becomes your fortress. When you operate from a place of inner strength, your progress becomes your loudest response. There is no need to reply to insults when your success becomes self-evident. Improving yourself is not about ego. It's not about becoming better than others. It's about becoming better than the version of you that once allowed others to control your emotions. It's about recognizing that the real battlefield is within, and every time you choose to grow instead of grieve, to build instead of break, you win. It may not be visible immediately. The world may not notice your effort. But eventually, the results become impossible to ignore, not because you announce them, but because transformation is something that radiates beyond words. People remember actions, they remember presence. They remember when someone who was once overlooked becomes undeniable. That is what improvement gives you. Not revenge, not temporary satisfaction, but lasting change, and with that change comes a quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't seek to destroy others, but to evolve beyond them. Because what could be more powerful than looking at the people who once tried to bring you down, and realizing they no longer matter? Not because you punished them, but because you outgrew everything they represented. When your energy is no longer wasted on the external, it turns inward. It begins to build you from the inside out. Your thoughts become clearer. Your actions become intentional. Your vision becomes focused. And slowly you begin to rise, not in anger, but in purpose. Not in vengeance, but in mastery. The higher you climb in your personal growth, the less you feel the need to look back. The higher you climb, the less noise you hear from below, because growth takes you to places where the old wounds can no longer follow. Growth elevates you above the chaos, above the drama, above the voices that once tried to hold you down. There is something profoundly powerful in the quiet pursuit of growth. In a world that is constantly trying to provoke reactions, to distract us, to pull us into unnecessary battles, choosing to remain focused on improving yourself is an act of inner mastery. When someone wrongs you, when they doubt you, when they try to reduce you, it creates a kind of tension inside, an emotional disturbance that demands resolution. But reacting outwardly often only amplifies that tension. It keeps you tied to the person or the moment that created the pain in the first place. True freedom is when you no longer feel the need to respond. True strength is when you can feel the sting of disrespect and use it as fuel to become better, not bitter. This is where discipline steps in. Discipline is not just about routines or rules. It is a form of respect you give to yourself. It is the recognition that your time, your energy, your attention is sacred, and you will not waste it on those who try to drag you down. Every time you rise early to train your body, to sharpen your mind, to strengthen your focus, you are sending a message, not to them, but to yourself. A message that you are no longer available for distractions. That you have chosen a higher path. That you are not here to fight battles born out of insecurity, but to build a life born out of vision. And vision is what sets you apart. Most people are stuck in cycles of blame and revenge because they have not yet defined a purpose larger than their pain. But when you know what you're working toward, when your days are anchored in meaning, then even the betrayal becomes a lesson, not a burden. You stop asking why it happened, and you start asking what you can do with it. You stop needing to be understood, and you start becoming undeniable. Because when your life begins to align with your inner purpose, you no longer need applause to stay committed. You no longer need enemies to feel motivated. Your improvement becomes self-driven. There's a kind of silence that comes from this place, not the silence of defeat, but the silence of power. A grounded, steady stillness that says, I am no longer here to convince anyone. I am no longer chasing the approval of people who never saw my worth. I am no longer reacting to those who once made me feel small. I am simply rising every single day, one choice at a time, and this kind of rise doesn't need validation because it is rooted in truth. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly where they are going, but that journey is not easy. Improvement requires sacrifice. It requires you to let go of the comforts that once kept you stagnant. It demands that you break the patterns that felt familiar, even when they were harmful, and most of all, it requires patience, because growth is not instant. It's not something you can fake. It's not about pretending you're better than others. It's about becoming better than the version of yourself who once settled for less. And that process is slow, uncomfortable, and deeply personal. But it is also sacred. Because in those moments, when you're choosing to push forward despite the doubts, when you're committing to your path despite the pain, you are becoming someone new. You begin to realize that every insult, every setback, every rejection was not the end of your story, but a call to evolve. Not to get even, but to grow beyond. And as you keep moving forward, something incredible begins to happen. The people who once tried to dim your light no longer have a hold on you. Their opinions, their actions, their judgments fade into the background. Not because you silenced them, but because your progress speaks louder. The results of your dedication, the strength you carry in your presence, the peace you wear like armor, those things speak volumes. And still you do not gloat. You do not return to mock or humiliate, because you've outgrown the need for that kind of closure. You understand now that the only real revenge is becoming so whole, so focused, so elevated, that they are left behind by default. Not because you wanted to leave them, but because you no longer belonged in that space. Improvement has changed your frequency. You now walk with purpose. You now act with intention. You now lead your life from a place of power, not pain. This is not a journey you take once. It is a daily decision, a quiet commitment you make each morning when you wake up and decide to keep going, not because anyone is watching, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you've come to realize that your growth is the only thing that cannot be taken from you. It is the most sacred form of victory, not over them, but over the limitations they once tried to impose on you. Improvement is not a moment of victory, it is a continuous movement of refinement. It is a quiet revolution that takes place deep within, a process that begins the moment you stop blaming others and start taking full responsibility for who you are becoming. When people hurt you, insult you, or leave you behind, the world teaches you to respond with anger or revenge, to mirror back the pain you received. But that response keeps you anchored in the same energy that created the suffering in the first place. You stay stuck in the cycle, repeating the same emotions, revisiting the same thoughts, reliving the same story, and slowly, without realizing it, your identity becomes shaped by the very people who hurt you. That is not strength. That is imprisonment by memory. To break free from that loop, you must decide to rise differently, not louder, but higher, not with noise, but with clarity. Because your life is too precious to be defined by anyone else's limitations. The true path of improvement is not about escaping pain, it's about transforming it. It's about turning your scars into your strength, your silence into your foundation, and your solitude into your sanctuary. You begin to train yourself to use everything, every failure, every insult, every rejection, as fuel for evolution. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is ignored. Everything is absorbed, digested, and used to construct the next version of yourself. This is not a glamorous path. There are no shortcuts, no applause, no instant rewards, but what you gain along the way is unshakable. You begin to feel a shift. You are no longer looking outward for direction. You are no longer letting your identity be shaped by comparison. You begin to look inward, not to escape, but to rebuild. You become the sculptor of your own character. Every day becomes an opportunity to remove what no longer serves you, to cut away the excuses, the resentment, the doubt. And in its place, you start carving discipline, patience, courage, and focus. You learn to sit in the discomfort that growth brings. You understand that becoming better is not always about doing more, it's about doing what matters with consistency and depth. It's about waking up and choosing not to be ruled by how you feel, but by who you want to be. This level of commitment becomes your quiet protest against everyone who thought you couldn't rise. But by the time they realize how far you've come, you're already too focused to care. You no longer need their recognition because you've given it to yourself. The process of improvement forces you to see what is real. You start to notice the conversations you no longer tolerate, the environments you no longer thrive in, the habits you no longer accept. You start to respect your own time more. You stop seeking temporary validation and start building permanent integrity. Improvement teaches you boundaries, not because you hate others, but because you finally love yourself enough to protect your peace. You realize that your energy is your most valuable currency, and not everyone deserves access to it. As this transformation continues, your silence becomes your strength. Your discipline becomes your identity. You no longer explain yourself. You no longer defend your path. The people who doubted you, who dismissed you, who tried to break you, they are no longer your concern. Not because you forgot, but because they no longer belong in the world you are creating. A world where you are the architect, a world built not on revenge, but on redemption, not on anger, but on awareness. Growth changes how you see everything. You stop trying to control what others think of you. You stop needing to win arguments or prove your worth through confrontation. Your life itself becomes the proof, the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself when no one is watching. It becomes impossible to fake, because improvement is not a performance. It is a transformation that seeps into every part of your being. You no longer seek revenge because you no longer need it. Your energy is being directed towards something greater. Toward building, toward creating, toward becoming. This is how you reclaim your power, not by reacting, but by refining, not by shouting, but by showing. Every choice you make to grow, no matter how small, is a quiet declaration that you will not be reduced by what you've been through. You will rise not to prove them wrong, but to prove to yourself that their actions were never strong enough to stop your evolution. The best revenge was never about them. It was always about you remembering who you are and becoming who you were meant to be. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must decide whether to stay where they are or step into the discomfort of growth. That decision rarely comes in a moment of joy. More often, it is born from pain, rejection, loss, or betrayal. It is during those moments, when the people you trusted walked away, when the world seemed indifferent to your effort, when your voice was ignored or your dreams were mocked, that you are given the opportunity to choose how you will respond. And while the urge to retaliate might feel justified, there is something far more powerful that lives in the decision to rise without reacting. The path of transformation does not run parallel to revenge. It runs beyond it. The best revenge is not about proving others wrong. It's about proving to yourself that their version of you was never the truth. It's about stepping so far into your growth that their actions no longer echo in your mind. When you begin to improve yourself, day after day, moment after moment, you are not just changing your habits or learning new skills. You are rebuilding the foundation of who you are. You are rewriting the narrative that others tried to place upon you. And you are doing it in silence, not to be seen, but because it is the only way forward. Growth is not linear. Some days you will feel strong, focused, unshakable. Other days you will feel exhausted, doubtful, tempted to return to the old version of yourself because it is familiar and safe. But improvement does not require perfection. It requires consistency. It demands that you keep showing up for yourself, even when no one else does. The process of growth will often feel invisible to others. They may not notice the way you have changed. They may not recognize the effort it took to break those old patterns, to overcome the limiting beliefs, to walk away from people and environments that no longer serve your evolution. But that doesn't matter, because you are not doing this for them. You are doing it for the version of yourself that once felt powerless, for the version of you who once begged for approval, for the person you used to be, the one who tolerated too much, gave too much, and received too little. You are not here to get revenge on the people who underestimated you. You are here to become the kind of person who no longer needs to be seen through their eyes at all. The irony is that the more you improve, the less you think about them. The more you grow, the less space they occupy in your thoughts. And that is the real victory. Not that you proved them wrong, but that you no longer need them to be wrong in order for you to be right. Improvement becomes your quiet rebellion, a rebellion against your past, against your excuses, against the idea that you are defined by your circumstances or your history. The path of self-improvement is hard because it forces you to look within, to confront the parts of you that still seek validation, that still carry wounds, that still hope for recognition from those who once ignored your worth. But the further you walk this path, the clearer it becomes that the only approval you ever needed was your own, that the only person you were ever meant to compete with was yesterday's version of yourself. And so you keep going, you train harder, you study deeper, you heal more intentionally. You begin to value your time, your boundaries, your peace. You are no longer living to react. You are living to create. You are building a life so full of meaning, so grounded in truth, that there is no longer any space for bitterness, not because it wasn't warranted, but because it is no longer necessary. Bitterness keeps you tied to the past. Growth moves you forward, and the more you grow, the more you realize that improvement is not something you do once. It is something you become. You become the person who doesn't need to explain their worth. You become the person who doesn't lower themselves to match the energy of those who tried to break them. You become the person who wakes up every morning with purpose, not because life is perfect, but because you have learned to master your response to it. The person who once lived in reaction now lives in alignment. The person who once sought revenge now seeks mastery. This journey of improvement teaches you that true power is quiet, grounded, and deeply personal. It is not born from rage, it is born from resilience. And as you continue to rise, you begin to see clearly that the best version of you never needed revenge. It simply needed time, effort, and unwavering commitment to becoming. So in the end, it was never about proving anyone wrong. It was about remembering who you are and choosing to become everything they said you couldn't be, not out of pride, but out of purpose. The best revenge is not loud. It does not shout, it does not seek attention. It is found in the quiet moments of discipline, in the daily choices that build strength, in the silent transformation that turns pain into power. You rise not to show them your success, but to show yourself your strength. Because healing is not weakness, growth is not surrender, and peace is not passivity. They are signs of mastery, so let them doubt, let them talk, let them walk away. While they remain where they are, you continue to evolve. That is your revenge, that is your answer, that is your freedom.